There is a quiet kind of morning that belongs to another time. A slower morning. A softer one. It begins before the sun has fully decided to rise. The sky is still pale, holding a gentle shade of gray-blue, like a breath that has not yet been released. The land rests in silence, wide and still. No engines hum. No distant traffic rolls across the horizon. Only the faint whisper of wind moves across open fields, brushing lightly against tall grass and wooden fences. A small house stands in this quiet space. It is simple. Built by hand, board by board. The wood carries the marks of tools and time. The roof slopes gently, holding the memory of many seasons: rain that tapped softly through spring nights, snow that rested in still winter silence, and long summer days where heat settled into the grain of the timber. Inside, the air is cool. The night has not fully let go. A faint glow from the fireplace lingers, now reduced to low embers. The warmth is gentle, barely enough to soften the chill that rests along the floor. Shadows sit quietly in the corners of the room, undisturbed. And in this quiet space, a person begins to wake. There is no sudden alarm. No sharp interruption. Waking comes slowly. A shift beneath a wool blanket. A soft inhale. The quiet awareness of morning arriving without urgency. The bed is modest. A wooden frame. A mattress filled with straw or feathers, covered with simple fabric. It is not perfect, but it is familiar. And that familiarity carries a certain comfort. For a moment, there is stillness. Eyes remain closed. The body listens to the silence, to the faint sounds of the early world beginning again. Somewhere outside, a bird makes a small call. Not loud. Not demanding. Just a simple note, as if testing the morning air. Then another bird answers. And another. Slowly, gently, the world begins. The person rises. Not quickly. Not all at once. Feet touch the wooden floor, cool and firm. The boards creak softly under weight, a sound that has been heard every day, in every season. It is a familiar sound, one that belongs to the house itself. Clothing is simple. A linen shirt. Slightly rough, but breathable. Trousers or a long skirt, depending on the wearer. Layers are added slowly, adjusted by hand. Each piece is worn with quiet purpose, not style. There is no mirror to study. No rush to prepare. Only the steady rhythm of beginning the day. The fireplace is the next place of attention. The embers are still alive, just barely. A hand reaches for kindling small pieces of dry wood gathered the day before. They are placed carefully, with practiced ease. A gentle breath, a small spark of effort, and the fire begins to return. At first, it is only a glow. Then a flicker. Then a soft, steady flame. The room begins to warm again, slowly pushing away the night. Light enters the house in a quiet way. It slips through small windows, filtered by simple glass that softens the outside world. Dust moves gently in the beams of light, drifting without purpose. There is no sudden brightness. Only a gradual unveiling. Outside, the land is becoming visible. Fields stretch outward, sometimes wide and open, sometimes broken by trees or fences. In the distance, there may be other homes, spaced far apart, each holding its own quiet life. The air carries the scent of earth. Damp soil. Faint traces of grass. Perhaps a hint of smoke from another chimney far away. Morning work begins without announcement. Water must be gathered. If there is a well nearby, a bucket is lowered slowly, the rope sliding through steady hands. The sound is soft, the faint creak of wood, the quiet splash as the bucket meets water below. When it rises again, it carries more than water. It carries the beginning of the day. Inside, simple food is prepared. Bread, perhaps baked the day before. Slightly firm now, but still good. It is sliced carefully. Maybe softened near the fire. There may be porridge, made from oats or cornmeal. Stirred slowly in a pot, thickening with time and gentle heat. If the household keeps animals, there may be milk fresh, cool, carried in a pail. Its taste is plain and clean. Every movement is unhurried. There is no sense of falling behind. Time, here, does not press. It moves in its own quiet way, like the slow passing of clouds overhead. Outside, the sun rises higher. Its warmth begins to touch the ground, lifting the coolness of night. Shadows grow shorter, softer. The sounds of the day gather, little by little. A distant animal call. The quiet movement of leaves. Footsteps on earth. Nothing is loud. Nothing is sharp. Everything belongs. Work continues, as it always does. There are tasks waiting, not written down, but remembered. They are part of life itself. And so the day unfolds. Slowly. Gently. Without hurry. The morning continues without pause, yet it never feels hurried. The light has now settled across the land in a calm and even way. It rests on rooftops, on fields, on the quiet paths that connect one place to another. The sky has opened into a soft blue, still gentle, still patient. Inside the home, the warmth from the fire has begun to spread. It reaches into the corners of the room, easing the coolness that once lingered there. The air feels more alive now, touched by heat and faint traces of wood smoke. There is a comfort in this warmth, something steady and dependable. Breakfast is taken without rush. There is no table crowded with many dishes. Only a few simple things, prepared with care. A bowl, a piece of bread, perhaps a small portion of butter if it is available. Each bite is slow. Each movement quiet. There is no need to speak much. Silence here is not empty. It is full in its own way. After the meal, the work of the home begins to take shape more clearly. Dishes are cleaned by hand. Water is poured, used, and set aside again. Cloth is used to wipe surfaces, to bring a sense of order to the small space. Everything has its place, and everything returns to it. The door opens. Outside air enters gently, carrying with it the scent of the morning. It is fresh, slightly cool, touched by the warmth that is slowly growing stronger. Stepping outside feels like entering a larger, quieter world. The ground beneath the feet is firm, sometimes soft with soil, sometimes marked by the paths worn over time. These paths do not rush anywhere. They simply lead, as they always have. Nearby, there may be a small garden. It is not large, but it is important. Rows of vegetables grow in careful lines. Leaves hold small drops of moisture from the night, catching the morning light in a quiet shimmer. Hands move slowly among the plants, checking, tending, removing what should not be there. There is patience in this work. Nothing grows quickly. Nothing is forced. Time is allowed to do its part. If animals are kept, they too become part of the morning rhythm. Chickens move in soft, uneven steps, pecking at the ground. Their sounds are low and constant, blending into the quiet of the day. Eggs may be gathered carefully, one by one, each placed gently into a basket. A cow, if present, stands with a steady calm. Milking is done with practiced hands. The motion is repeated, again and again, in a slow and even pattern. The sound is soft milk meeting the inside of a pail, a quiet and familiar rhythm. There is no strain in these actions. Only repetition. Only routine. The sun continues its gradual climb. Its light grows warmer, but never harsh. Shadows shift slightly, almost unnoticed, as the hours pass in their quiet way. Tools are gathered for the work ahead. They are simple tools, shaped by use. Wood handles worn smooth by hands over many days, many seasons. Metal edges that have been sharpened, cared for, relied upon. Each tool has a purpose. Each purpose is understood. Work in the fields may begin. The soil is turned slowly, each movement steady and measured. There is no machine to speed the process. Only hands, strength, and time. The body moves with the work. There is a rhythm to it. Step, press, lift. Step, press, lift. The motion repeats, not in a way that feels heavy, but in a way that feels known. The kind of movement that does not need thought. Around this work, the world remains quiet. Wind passes gently through the grass. It carries a soft, steady sound, like a distant whisper that never quite fades. Insects move through the air, barely noticed, part of the living stillness. There is no clock in sight. Time is felt, not measured. It is understood through light, through shadow, through the quiet signals of the body and the land. Back at the house, other tasks continue. Cloth may be washed by hand, dipped into water and worked slowly until clean. It is then hung outside, where it moves gently in the breeze, drying under the open sky. The sight is simple. Fabric shifting softly against the light. Nothing more. Inside, small repairs may be made. A loose board adjusted. A tool mended. Threads pulled through fabric to close a tear. Each action is careful, unhurried, done with attention. There is no excess. Things are kept, used, cared for. As the morning deepens, the air begins to change. It grows warmer, though still comfortable. The early coolness has faded, replaced by a steady and even warmth that settles across everything. The sounds of the day remain soft. There is no sudden noise, no sharp interruption. Only the continued presence of small, natural sounds, the movement of life in its quiet form. Mid-morning arrives almost without notice. There is no clear line where early morning ends and the next part begins. It simply shifts, like light moving across a floor. The pace does not change. It remains steady, calm, unbroken. Hands continue their work. Feet follow familiar paths. The land offers what it can, and the people move within it, not against it. Sometimes, there is a pause. A moment to stand still. To look out across the fields, or toward the trees at the edge of the land. The distance is quiet. The horizon feels wide and open, without pressure, without demand. Breathing slows. The body rests, just for a moment. And then, gently, the work begins again. There is no urgency to finish. Only a quiet understanding that the day will unfold as it always does. Piece by piece. Task by task. Moment by moment. The sun now sits higher, its presence more fully felt. Light touches everything more directly. Colors become slightly clearer, though still soft, still natural. And in this growing light, the day continues its calm and steady path, moving slowly toward the quiet fullness of midday. By the time midday begins to settle over the land, the light has changed in a quiet but noticeable way. It is no longer soft and angled like the early morning. Now it rests more directly above, spreading evenly across fields, across rooftops, across the worn paths that carry the memory of many footsteps. The warmth has deepened. It is not harsh, but it is present in a steady, comforting way. The air feels fuller now, touched by the sun's gentle weight. The coolness of morning has faded into something softer, something more settled. Work continues, though it begins to slow. Not from urgency, but from a natural rhythm. The body understands when to pause. Hands, once moving steadily through tasks, begin to ease. Movements grow slightly slower, more deliberate. There is no sense of stopping completely, only a gentle shift, like a breath taken after a long, quiet effort. Somewhere nearby, the faint sound of insects fills the air. It is constant, but not distracting. A soft, steady hum that blends into the stillness of the day. It feels almost like part of the silence itself. A return toward the home begins. Steps follow familiar ground, the same paths worn by days, by seasons, by years of quiet repetition. The earth beneath feels known, each step placed without thought. The house waits as it always does. Still. Patient. Inside, the air is warmer now, though still comfortable. The fire may have been allowed to rest, its purpose less urgent under the midday sun. Light fills the room more completely, soft but present, touching the wooden surfaces and simple belongings. Midday food is prepared in the same calm manner as the morning meal. Nothing elaborate. Nothing rushed. Perhaps there is leftover bread, softened slightly. A small portion of vegetables, cooked or preserved. If there is meat, it is used carefully, in small amounts, stretched across days rather than taken all at once. Water is poured again. Cool, simple, essential. Each movement is familiar. Each action repeated from memory, not from instruction. The meal is eaten slowly. There is no need to hurry through it. Time does not press forward here. It simply continues. Outside, the world remains quiet. The fields rest under the sun. The breeze has softened, moving only occasionally, just enough to stir leaves or shift the edges of hanging cloth. Animals grow quieter too. They settle into the warmth, moving less, conserving energy in the stillness of the midday hours. After eating, there is often a moment of rest. Not a deep sleep, but a pause. A sitting down. A leaning back. A stillness that allows the body to settle after the steady work of the morning. Eyes may close for a short while. Or they may remain open, simply observing the quiet space. The sounds are few. A distant bird. The faint creak of wood as the house adjusts to warmth. The slow passing of air through an open doorway. Nothing more. This moment does not last long, but it does not need to. It is enough. Soon, the day begins to move again. Not quickly. Never quickly. Work resumes, though often in a lighter way than before. There may be tasks that require less strength, less constant motion. Tools are picked up again, but gently. Hands return to their purpose, but without strain. Inside the home, small tasks continue. Food may be prepared for later in the day. Ingredients gathered, cleaned, set aside. There is a quiet sense of planning, though it is not written or measured. It lives in memory, in habit. Clothing may be mended again, or folded, or simply adjusted. Everything is done with care. Nothing is wasted. Outside, the sun begins its slow movement downward. It is almost unnoticeable at first. The light remains bright, but something in it softens, just slightly. Shadows begin to stretch again, though only by a small degree. The air shifts. There is a faint return of movement in the breeze, as if the day itself is beginning to exhale. Work in the fields may continue, but at a quieter pace. There is no push to complete everything at once. The land will still be there tomorrow. And the day understands this. There is a steady patience in everything. Each task finds its place in time, not forced, not hurried. Sometimes, there is a moment to stand again. To look outward. To notice how the light rests differently now than it did before. How the colors of the land feel just a little softer, just a little deeper. These changes are small. But they are always there. The body feels them, even if the mind does not name them. Footsteps move again between spaces. From field to home. From home to yard. From one quiet place to another. There is a continuity in these movements, like a gentle thread that carries the day forward without interruption. No part feels separate. Everything connects. As the afternoon slowly approaches, the world seems to grow even calmer. Not because less is happening, but because everything has settled into its place. The work, the light, the air, the quiet sounds, they all move together now in a steady, unbroken rhythm. There is no resistance. Only flow. The sun, still warm, begins its gradual descent. The sky remains clear, open, holding the soft brightness of the day. And beneath it, life continues as it always has. Slowly. Gently. Without urgency. The afternoon is near, though it does not announce itself. It simply arrives, the same way everything else does. Quietly. The afternoon settles in with a quiet sense of continuation. Nothing changes all at once. There is no clear moment where midday ends and afternoon begins. It is simply a soft transition, like the slow turning of a page that makes no sound. The sun has begun its gentle descent. Its light is still warm, still steady, but now it leans slightly, stretching across the land at a lower angle. Shadows grow longer, though they remain soft at their edges. The air feels different. There is a faint easing of the earlier warmth. Not a coolness yet, but a lightness, as if the day is beginning to relax. Work continues, but it has softened. The steady effort of the morning is behind now. Movements are slower, more measured. There is no sense of needing to do more, only a quiet understanding of what remains. In the fields, the soil has warmed under the sun. Tools move through it with a familiar rhythm, though the pace is gentle. Each motion is careful, thoughtful, without strain. The body has already given much to the day, and now it moves in a quieter way. The sounds of the afternoon are subtle. Wind passes more freely now, brushing through trees and tall grass with a soft, continuous whisper. Leaves shift gently, creating a sound that is neither loud nor silent, but somewhere in between. Insects continue their steady presence. Their hum rises and falls, blending with the breeze, becoming part of the air itself. From time to time, a distant sound may carry across the land. Perhaps the faint call of another person working far away. Perhaps the low sound of an animal moving through its own quiet routine. These sounds do not disturb the calm. They belong to it. Near the house, small tasks return again. Water may be drawn once more, not in haste, but in preparation for the evening. The bucket lowers and rises with the same steady motion as before, the rope moving smoothly through practiced hands. Inside, the space feels different now. The light entering through the windows has shifted. It is warmer, softer, carrying a golden tone that rests gently on the wooden walls and floor. Dust drifts slowly through these beams, moving without purpose, without interruption. There is a stillness here that feels deeper than before. Not empty, but full of quiet presence. Food for the evening begins to take shape. Preparation is slow and steady. Ingredients are gathered one by one. Nothing is wasted, nothing hurried. Each step follows the next in a natural order that needs no instruction. A pot may be placed near the fire again. The flame is coaxed back to life if it has faded, the wood arranged carefully, the heat building slowly. The sound of the fire returns soft crackling, low and constant. It is a familiar sound. One that has been heard at the end of many days. Outside, the light continues to change. The sun lowers further, and with it, the colors of the land begin to soften. Greens grow deeper, shadows stretch wider, and the sky holds a quiet warmth that feels calm and unhurried. Work in the fields begins to come to a close. Not all at once. One task finishes, then another. Tools are cleaned, or simply set aside, placed where they will be found again tomorrow. There is no rush to gather everything at once. Each action has its time. Each ending is gentle. The body begins to feel the day. Not in a heavy way, but in a quiet awareness. Muscles that have worked steadily now begin to rest. Movements slow even more, becoming softer, lighter. Steps back toward the home feel familiar. They follow the same paths as before, but now the light is different. The shadows stretch across the ground, marking the passing of time in a way that feels natural and calm. Animals, too, begin to settle. Chickens return to their resting places, moving in small, quiet groups. Their sounds are softer now, less constant. A cow may stand quietly, or lie down, its movements slow and deliberate. The world is preparing, in its own way, for evening. Inside the home, the warmth of the fire grows steady again. The air becomes comfortable, gently heated against the cooling air outside. The room feels enclosed, safe, held within its wooden walls. The light continues to shift. It is no longer bright, but soft and golden, touching everything with a calm glow. There is no need for artificial light yet. The day still lingers. Evening tasks are simple. Food is stirred slowly. Water is set aside. Small things are arranged, adjusted, prepared for the night that will come later. There is no urgency. Only a quiet continuation. Sometimes, there is a pause at the doorway. A moment to stand and look outward. The land stretches quietly under the lowering sun. The horizon feels wide, open, unchanged. The sky begins to hold deeper tones, though still gentle, still calm. Breathing slows. The day feels longer here, not because it moves slowly, but because it is felt fully, in each small moment. There is no need to hurry it along. It will move as it always does. Gradually. Softly. Without demand. The sounds of the world begin to soften further. The breeze slows. The insects grow quieter. Everything begins to settle into a deeper calm. The afternoon fades not with a clear ending, but with a gentle blending into the early edges of evening. Light lowers. Shadows stretch. And the day, still steady, still peaceful, continues its quiet path forward. Evening arrives in a quiet, unspoken way. There is no clear moment when it begins. It comes gently, carried in the lowering of the sun, in the softening of the light, in the way the air begins to cool just slightly against the skin. The sky shifts in color. What was once a steady blue now takes on warmer tones, pale gold, soft amber, hints of fading light that stretch across the horizon. The sun moves closer to the edge of the land, not in haste, but with the same calm patience it has held all day. Shadows grow longer. They reach across the ground, thin and quiet, touching fences, fields, and the worn paths that lead back to the home. The world feels slower now. Not because less is happening, but because everything is settling. The work of the day is nearly complete. Tools have been set aside. Hands, once busy, now move with less purpose, more ease. There is a quiet understanding that what needed to be done has been done, and what remains can wait. Inside the home, the fire has become the center once more. Its glow is steady, warm, and comforting. The light it gives is soft, flickering gently against the walls. It does not fill the room completely, but it creates a space that feels safe and enclosed, separate from the growing dimness outside. Food for the evening is ready. It has been prepared slowly, without rush. A simple meal, much like the others. Perhaps a stew, warmed over the fire. Bread, broken by hand. Vegetables, softened by heat. Each part of the meal is modest, but it carries the quiet satisfaction of effort, of time spent in care. The meal is eaten slowly. There is no urgency now at all. Each bite is taken with a calm awareness, each movement unhurried. The day has stretched long and steady, and now it begins to rest. The sounds of the outside world begin to change. The daytime noises grow softer. In their place, new sounds emerge. A distant call in the fading light. The subtle movement of night creatures beginning to stir. The breeze cools further, passing more gently through the trees, carrying a softer tone. Light continues to fade. The golden tones of evening deepen, then slowly begin to disappear. The sky shifts again, moving towards softer shades, muted blues, gentle grays. Inside, the firelight becomes more noticeable. It flickers steadily, casting moving shadows that dance quietly along the wooden walls. These shadows are soft, never sharp, always shifting in a slow and gentle rhythm. There is a calmness here that feels complete. After the meal, there are small tasks. Nothing heavy. Nothing demanding. Dishes are cleaned slowly, by hand, with water that has been drawn and saved. Each motion is familiar, repeated without thought. The space is tidied. Not perfectly, but enough. Everything returns to its place, ready to be used again when the next day begins. Sometimes, there is a moment of stillness. Sitting near the fire. Hands resting. Body quiet. The warmth from the flame reaches outward, holding the coolness of the evening at a gentle distance. It is not strong heat, but it is enough. Enough to feel comfortable. Enough to feel at ease. Outside, the last light begins to leave the sky. The horizon darkens slowly. There is no sudden change, only a gradual fading, like a breath that becomes softer and softer until it is almost gone. The first signs of night appear. A single point of light in the sky. Then another. Stars begin to show themselves, faint at first, then clearer as the light of the day continues to disappear. The world grows quieter still. The sounds that remain are soft and distant. Nothing sharp. Nothing sudden. Only the gentle presence of the night settling over the land. The door may be closed now. The inside of the home becomes its own small world. Warm. Dimly lit. Protected from the cool air outside. The fire continues to burn, though it may be allowed to soften, its flames lower now, its glow more gentle than before. There is no need for much light. Only enough to see. Only enough to feel the space. The body begins to feel the full length of the day. Not as a burden, but as a quiet tiredness. A natural slowing. Movements become softer. Steps quieter. There is no rush toward sleep. It comes in its own time. Clothing is adjusted for the night. Layers removed or changed. Simple fabrics, worn and familiar, prepared for rest. The bed waits, just as it did the night before. Unchanged. Steady. A place of quiet return. Before lying down, there may be one last pause. A glance toward the fading fire. A moment of stillness in the dim light. The room holds a deep calm now. The kind that comes only after a full day has gently passed. Outside, the night has settled completely. The sky is darker now, filled with quiet stars. The land rests beneath it, still and undisturbed. Inside, the final movements of the day begin to fade. The body lowers into rest. The blanket is pulled close. Warmth gathers gently. There is a final sense of stillness. Of quiet completion. And then, slowly, the day lets go. Not all at once. Not suddenly. But gently. Like the fading light. Like the soft ending of a long, calm breath. Night has now fully settled over the land, not as something sudden, but as a quiet presence that has slowly, gently taken the place of the day. The last traces of light have faded from the horizon, leaving behind a sky that feels deep and open, stretching endlessly above fields, trees, and small wooden homes resting in stillness. The air has cooled, carrying a softness that was not there before, a gentle chill that touches the skin in a calm and almost comforting way. Nothing feels rushed, nothing feels unfinished. The day has already given all that it needed to give, and now it simply rests. Inside the home, the fire has grown low, its earlier strength now softened into a quiet, glowing bed of embers. The light it gives is faint but steady, casting a dim, warm glow that barely reaches the corners of the room. Shadows settle more deeply now, no longer moving as much, no longer dancing across the walls. The space feels smaller in the darkness, more enclosed, more peaceful. The wooden structure of the house holds the warmth gently, protecting against the cool night air outside, creating a space that feels calm and secure. The sounds of the night are different from those of the day, but they are just as soft, just as steady. There may be the faint call of distant insects, their rhythm slow and constant, blending into the silence rather than breaking it. Occasionally, a small sound might come from far away, a subtle movement, perhaps an animal shifting in the darkness, or the quiet rustle of leaves touched by a light breeze. These sounds do not disturb the calm. They belong to the night in the same way that birdsong belongs to the morning. The body, now fully aware of the passing day, begins to settle more deeply into rest. There is no tension in this movement, no effort required. It happens naturally, like the closing of a door that has been open all day. Muscles relax, breathing slows, and the steady rhythm of the body becomes more noticeable in the quiet. The mind does not race. It does not wander far. It simply drifts, following the same slow pace that the day has carried from morning until now. Lying beneath a simple blanket, the feeling of warmth grows gradually. The fabric is familiar, slightly rough but comforting in its own way, holding the heat close without excess. The bed itself is modest, unchanged from night to night, yet it offers a sense of consistency that feels deeply calming. There is no need for adjustment, no need for thought. The body finds its place easily, settling into a position that has been repeated many times before. The fire continues to fade, though very slowly. Each ember glows softly, then dims, then glows again, as if breathing in its own quiet rhythm. The light it gives becomes less and less, until it is only a faint suggestion of warmth rather than a source of illumination. The room grows darker, but not in a way that feels empty or cold. It feels full of quiet, full of rest. Outside, the night stretches on without interruption. The sky remains clear, filled with small, steady points of light that do not flicker or rush. The land beneath them is still. Fields that were once full of movement now rest completely, untouched by footsteps or tools. Trees stand quietly, their branches barely moving, their shapes softened by the darkness. Time continues, but it is no longer something that is noticed. There are no markers here, no clear moments to measure. Only the steady passing of seconds, blending into minutes, blending into hours. Everything feels continuous, unbroken, like a long, slow breath that never fully ends. Sleep comes gently. Not as a sudden change, but as a gradual drifting. Thoughts become softer, less defined. The awareness of the room, of the fire, of the quiet sounds outside begins to fade, replaced by a deeper stillness. The body sinks further into rest, held by the calm that has been building throughout the entire day. There is no resistance. No effort. Only a quiet letting go. The night holds everything in place: the house, the land, the sky, the stillness, all resting together in a calm that feels complete and undisturbed. Nothing asks for attention. Nothing calls out. Everything simply remains, steady and quiet. And as the hours pass in this gentle stillness, the world continues its slow, unseen movement toward another morning, one that will arrive just as softly, just as patiently, as this day once began. Somewhere deep within the quiet stretch of night, long before the first hint of morning begins to appear, there is a moment that feels almost suspended in time. It is a moment when the darkness is at its fullest, when the world is neither ending nor beginning, but simply resting in a deep and uninterrupted stillness. The air has cooled further now, settling gently over the land, touching the fields and trees with a soft, even calm. Inside the home, the last traces of warmth from the fire remain close to the ground, faint but present, held within the wooden walls that have quietly protected this small space through many nights just like this one. The embers in the fireplace have nearly faded, though a small glow still lingers beneath a thin layer of ash, breathing slowly in a rhythm so subtle it is almost unnoticeable. The room is dark now, not completely empty of light, but filled with a dimness that feels soft rather than heavy. Shapes can still be sensed: the outline of a chair, the edge of a table, the gentle rise of the bed, but they are no longer clearly seen. They exist in a quiet, resting form, just like everything else. Outside, the sky is at its deepest shade. The stars remain, steady and distant, spread across the vast openness above. They do not move quickly, nor do they draw attention to themselves. They simply remain, constant and calm, part of a pattern that has continued without interruption for countless nights. The land below is still. No footsteps cross the ground. No tools move through the soil. Even the breeze has quieted, leaving the air almost completely still. Within this stillness, the body remains at rest, held in a gentle and steady sleep. Breathing is slow and even, rising and falling without effort. There is no awareness of time passing, no sense of the hours moving forward. The mind drifts in a quiet space, free from the weight of the day's work, free from any need to act or respond. Everything is softened, everything at ease. And then, slowly, so slowly it is almost impossible to notice at first, something begins to change. It is not a sound, not a movement, but a shift. A quiet, gradual transition that begins far beyond the horizon, where the first light of a new day is preparing to return. The darkness does not leave all at once. It lingers, holding its place, even as the faintest hint of gray begins to touch the edge of the sky. Inside the home, nothing has changed yet. The room remains still, wrapped in darkness. The embers continue their slow fading, now barely glowing at all. The air feels cool, but not uncomfortable. The blanket holds its warmth gently, creating a small space of comfort within the larger quiet. Outside, the shift becomes slightly more noticeable. The sky, once deep and endless, begins to soften at its edges. The stars closest to the horizon grow faint, not disappearing suddenly, but gently fading as the first traces of light begin to rise. The land remains still, but it is no longer held in complete darkness. There is a softness now, a very slight lifting of the night. Time moves forward in the same quiet way it always has. Unmarked. Unrushed. The body, still resting, begins to respond to this subtle change, though not fully awake. There is a slight shift in breathing, a small movement, a quiet stirring that does not yet lead to waking. It is simply the beginning of awareness returning, slowly, gently, without demand. The air carries a different feeling now. Still cool, still calm, but touched by something new. A faint freshness that belongs only to the earliest moments of morning, before the sun has risen, before the day has fully begun. Then, after some time, the first sound returns. It is soft, almost hesitant. A single bird, somewhere in the distance, offering a quiet note into the fading darkness. It does not break the silence, but becomes part of it, adding a gentle layer to the stillness that remains. Another sound follows, just as soft. Then another. The world is beginning again. Inside the home, the room is still dim, but the darkness has changed. It is no longer complete. There is a faint suggestion of light now, barely visible, but present enough to soften the edges of everything within the space. The body begins to wake. Not all at once. Not suddenly. But in the same slow, steady way that the day itself returns. A breath deepens. A hand shifts slightly. Eyes may remain closed for a while longer, resting in that quiet space between sleep and waking, where everything feels calm and unhurried. The blanket still holds warmth. The air still feels cool. The room still rests in near silence. And yet, the day is already beginning. Outside, the sky continues to brighten, though gently, patiently, without any sense of urgency. The horizon takes on a pale tone, a soft gray-blue that slowly spreads upward, replacing the deeper shades of night. The stars fade one by one. Not disappearing, but stepping back, making space for the light that is returning. The land begins to reveal itself again. First in outlines. Then in soft shapes. Then in quiet detail. And within this slow and steady return, the rhythm of life prepares to begin once more, just as it did before, just as it will again and again, without change, without hurry. The cycle continues. Morning is near. And the calm, steady routine of another day waits gently ahead. Morning returns in the same quiet way it always has, without announcement, without interruption, slowly filling the space that night leaves behind. The first light does not rush across the land but spreads gently, touching the horizon first, then rising little by little, revealing the shapes of trees, fields, and the simple outlines of homes that have rested through the long night. The air carries a soft freshness, cool and clean, holding a calm stillness that feels untouched, as if the world has been carefully set in place once again. Inside the home, the dimness begins to lift almost without notice, and the room slowly becomes visible in soft layers. The wooden walls take on a pale tone as the light enters, the edges of familiar objects becoming clearer with each passing moment. The bed, still warm from rest, holds the quiet shape of sleep, while the air within the room feels cool but gentle, balanced between the fading warmth of the night and the coming warmth of the day. The body wakes slowly, following the same steady rhythm as the rising light. There is no sudden movement, no sharp return to activity. Instead, there is a gradual awareness, a quiet drifting upward from rest. Breathing deepens, stretching into a more active rhythm, and the stillness of sleep begins to soften into the first small motions of the morning. A hand shifts, a shoulder turns slightly, and the eyes may open slowly, adjusting to the gentle light that now fills the room. For a moment, there is stillness again, but it is a different kind of stillness than the night. It is lighter, more open, carrying the quiet promise of the day ahead without placing any demand upon it. The room feels calm, unchanged, holding the same simple order it has always held. Nothing is out of place. Nothing calls for immediate attention. Outside, the sounds of the morning begin to grow, though they remain soft and widely spaced. Birds call in gentle tones, not loud, not urgent, but steady and clear, marking the beginning of another day in the most natural way. The breeze returns lightly, moving through leaves and grass with a soft, continuous motion that feels almost like breathing. Rising from the bed happens slowly, with no rush to stand, no need to move quickly. The feet meet the floor, feeling the cool surface beneath them, grounding the body gently back into the space of the waking world. The air touches the skin with a faint chill, though it carries a quiet comfort that feels familiar and steady. Clothing is adjusted in a simple and practical way, with no excess, no decoration beyond what is needed. Fabric is worn from use, softened over time, fitting naturally without thought. Each movement is calm, each action repeated from memory, forming a routine that requires no effort to recall. The door may open once more, just as it did the day before, allowing the morning air to enter fully. It carries the scent of earth, of grass, of a world that has rested and is now ready to begin again. The light outside is still soft, still early, casting long, gentle shadows that stretch across the ground. Stepping outside feels like stepping into a space that has quietly waited. The land is calm. The sky is open. Everything is in its place. There is a pause here, a moment to stand and take in the quiet of the morning, not as something to observe closely, but as something to simply be within. The breath moves easily, the body feels rested, and the mind remains clear, untouched by urgency. The first tasks of the day begin again, just as they did before. Water is drawn slowly, the same careful motion repeated, the rope moving through steady hands, the bucket rising with quiet purpose. The sound is soft, familiar, blending into the gentle atmosphere of the morning. Nearby, animals begin their own quiet routines. Chickens move through the yard in small, deliberate steps, their movements calm and unhurried. A cow may stand waiting, or shift slowly, ready for the steady rhythm of milking that follows. These actions are not separate from the day, they are part of it, woven into its quiet flow. The garden, still touched by the coolness of the early air, holds small drops of moisture along the leaves, catching the light in a faint, shimmering way. Hands move gently among the plants, checking, tending, making small adjustments that require patience rather than speed. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. Everything follows the same steady rhythm. The sun continues its slow rise, lifting higher into the sky, bringing with it a gradual warmth that begins to replace the coolness of the morning. The light grows stronger, though it remains soft, spreading evenly across the land, touching every surface with a calm and steady presence. Inside the home, the fire may be brought back to life once more, its warmth returning gradually, filling the room in a gentle and familiar way. The sound of crackling wood joins the quiet sounds of the morning, creating a sense of continuity, of routine carried forward without change. Breakfast begins again, simple and unhurried, prepared with the same care, eaten with the same calm awareness. Each movement is known, each action repeated without thought, forming a pattern that feels steady and complete. And as the morning continues to unfold, just as it did before, the day begins once more not as something new or different, but as a continuation of what has always been. The rhythm remains the same, the pace unchanged, the quiet flow of life moving forward in its own time, without interruption, without urgency. The light grows. The air warms. The world wakes fully again. And within this gentle return, the routine continues, steady and unbroken, carrying the day forward just as it has always done. As the morning continues to unfold, the light grows more present, though it never feels overwhelming, never sharp or sudden. It spreads across the land in a quiet and steady way, touching the tops of trees first, then settling over the fields, then finally resting gently against the walls of the home. The coolness of early morning begins to soften, replaced by a mild and comfortable warmth that slowly builds without ever demanding attention. The air feels balanced now, neither cold nor warm, but calm and even, as if the day has found its natural place. The movements of the morning settle into a familiar rhythm once more, one that does not need to be thought about or planned. Each action follows the last in a quiet sequence that has been repeated so many times it feels almost like part of the body itself. Hands move steadily, without hesitation, completing small tasks that together form the shape of the day. There is no sense of beginning or ending within these actions, only a gentle continuation. In the yard, the ground begins to dry where the early moisture once rested, leaving behind a soft firmness beneath each step. Footprints may appear briefly, then fade again as the earth settles. The path between the house and the well, between the garden and the small outbuildings, carries the quiet memory of movement, worn smooth by time rather than shaped by force. The sounds of the world have grown slightly, though they remain soft and widely spaced. Birds continue their steady calls, now more frequent but still calm, filling the air in a way that feels natural rather than busy. The breeze moves lightly, passing through leaves and grass with a soft, continuous motion that never rises into anything stronger. It is simply there, present, steady, and unchanging. Work continues in this same gentle rhythm. In the fields, the soil responds to careful hands and simple tools. Each movement is deliberate, measured, and calm, as if guided by a quiet understanding rather than instruction. The body does not rush. It moves in a steady pace that can be maintained for long hours without strain, without urgency. The sun rises higher. Its warmth becomes more noticeable now, though it still feels soft, resting gently across the shoulders, across the ground, across the wide open spaces that stretch outward without interruption. Shadows begin to shorten slightly, though they remain present, marking the slow and steady passage of time. Inside the home, the morning tasks begin to fade into smaller, quieter actions. The space feels more open now, filled with light, holding a calm that is steady and unbroken. The fire burns softly, no longer the center of attention, but still present, still offering a quiet warmth that blends into the atmosphere of the room. Clothing may be adjusted again as the air warms, layers shifting in a simple and practical way. Nothing is excessive. Everything serves a purpose. The fabric moves easily with the body, worn and familiar, requiring no thought. There is no clock to mark the passing of hours. Time is felt instead. In the position of the sun. In the length of shadows. In the quiet changes of light and air. The body follows this time naturally, without needing to measure it. From time to time, there is a pause. A moment to stand upright, to rest the hands, to allow the breath to settle. These pauses are not planned. They come naturally, arising from the steady rhythm of work. The eyes may lift toward the horizon, not searching, not observing closely, but simply resting on the open space that stretches outward. The land feels wide. Unbroken. Calm. The sky remains clear, holding a soft and even blue that deepens slowly as the sun climbs. There are no sudden changes here, no sharp contrasts. Everything shifts gradually, gently, in a way that feels almost unnoticed unless one is very still. And so the morning continues, not as a series of events, but as a quiet flow. Each moment blends into the next. Each action carries forward into another. Nothing stands apart. Nothing demands attention. Even the sounds of movement, the step on soil, the light touch of tools, the quiet motion of animals feel like part of a larger stillness, rather than interruptions to it. The body grows warm from steady work, though not tired. The breath remains even. The pace remains unchanged. There is comfort in this repetition. A quiet sense of knowing what comes next, not because it has been planned, but because it has always been this way. And as the sun continues its slow rise, moving steadily toward its highest point, the day carries on, calm and uninterrupted, following the same gentle rhythm that has guided it from the first light of morning. Nothing rushes forward. Nothing falls behind. Everything moves together. And within this quiet movement, the routine continues, steady and unbroken, just as it always has. As the morning moves quietly toward its later hours, there is a subtle deepening of the day that can be felt more than seen, a gentle shift that settles into the air, into the light, and into the steady rhythm of movement that continues without interruption. The sun has climbed higher now, no longer resting near the horizon, but standing with a quiet confidence above the land, casting its light more directly across fields and rooftops, softening shadows and spreading warmth in a way that feels even and constant. The air, once cool and fresh, now carries a mild warmth that wraps gently around the body, not heavy, not pressing, but present in a steady and comforting way. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, like the slow passage of time itself, surrounding everything without changing its calm nature. Work continues, though it has settled into an even deeper rhythm, one that feels almost effortless. The hands move as they have moved many times before, guided by memory and quiet understanding rather than thought. Each motion is smooth, without hesitation, without strain, forming a continuous flow that carries forward without pause. There is no need to hurry, no sense of urgency. The work will be done in its own time, just as it always has been. In the fields, the soil responds differently now under the steady warmth of the sun. It is softer in some places, firmer in others, but always familiar beneath each step. The tools, simple and worn, move through it with a quiet ease, their purpose clear, their use unchanged. The sound they make is soft and rhythmic, blending into the surrounding stillness rather than standing apart from it. The sky above remains open and clear, holding a deeper shade of blue now, steady and unbroken. There are no sudden movements there, no sharp changes, only a wide and quiet presence that stretches endlessly, mirroring the calm of the land below. From time to time, a light breeze passes through, not strong enough to disturb anything, but enough to carry a gentle motion across the fields, touching leaves and grass with a soft, flowing movement. It brings with it a slight shift in the air, a momentary coolness that fades just as quietly as it arrives. The sounds of the day have become steady now, settled into a quiet pattern that continues without variation. Birds call less frequently, their morning activity easing into a softer presence. Insects hum lightly in the background, their sound constant but never overwhelming, forming a gentle layer beneath everything else. Near the home, smaller tasks continue in the same calm manner. Water may be carried, tools adjusted, spaces tidied, each action performed slowly and with care. Inside, the room is filled with light, the earlier shadows now softened almost completely, leaving behind a space that feels open and still. There is no sense of separation between inside and outside. Both hold the same quiet atmosphere. Both move in the same slow rhythm. The body continues its steady work, though there is an increasing awareness of the warmth, not as discomfort, but as a gentle reminder of the sun's presence. Movements remain calm, but there may be more frequent pauses now, small moments where the hands rest and the breath settles, allowing the body to remain balanced within the steady flow of the day. These pauses are brief, but they feel complete. There is no need for longer rest. Only a moment. Then the movement continues again. The sun rises higher still. Shadows grow shorter. The light becomes more direct, though it never loses its softness. It rests evenly across everything, creating a sense of quiet clarity in the world. Time continues to pass without being measured. There are no markers here, no signals to divide the hours. Only the slow and steady change of light. Only the quiet movement of air. Only the rhythm of the body, working, pausing, and continuing again. The land remains calm. The sky remains open. The sounds remain soft. And within this steady and unbroken flow, the late morning gently approaches its natural turning point, moving slowly toward the stillness of midday, where the sun will rest at its highest place and the world will grow even quieter. Nothing announces this transition. Nothing interrupts the calm. It simply happens, just as everything else has happened, slowly, gently, and without effort. Midday arrives in a way that does not feel like arrival at all, but rather like a gentle settling of everything that has already been unfolding since morning. The sun now rests high above the land, steady and patient, holding the world in a soft, even brightness that touches every surface without urgency. The light is fuller here, more complete, yet still calm, as if it has reached its natural balance and now simply remains. The air is warm at this point in the day, not heavy, not sharp, but evenly spread across the fields and around the home, wrapping everything in a quiet and familiar comfort. It carries the faint scent of earth and wood and growing things, all mixed together in a way that feels constant and unchanging. Nothing in it demands attention. It simply exists, surrounding life in a steady and unbroken presence. Work, which has continued since early morning, begins to soften again. Not stopping, not ending, but easing into a slower rhythm that feels more like continuation than effort. The body moves with quiet familiarity, each action shaped by repetition, each motion guided by memory rather than thought. There is no strain in this way of working, only a steady flow that has been learned over time and now feels natural, almost like breathing. In the open fields, the ground holds the full warmth of the sun now. The soil is neither too dry nor too damp, but balanced in a way that makes movement through it feel steady and predictable. Tools pass through it with a quiet rhythm, their presence blending into the surrounding stillness. The sound they make is soft and low, never breaking the calm atmosphere that surrounds everything. The sky above remains wide and clear, holding its deep, even blue without change. There are no clouds that demand attention, no sudden shifts in color or form. It is a sky that simply holds itself in place, offering a constant presence that mirrors the steady rhythm of the land below. From time to time, the breeze returns, though always gently. It moves through trees and tall grass in a slow, flowing motion, creating a soft rustling sound that rises and falls without pattern. It touches the skin lightly, offering a brief sense of coolness before fading again into the warmth of the day. Nothing about it interrupts the calm. It only adds to it. The sounds of midday are fewer now, more spaced apart, as if the world itself has entered a quieter phase. Birds rest more often, their earlier activity softened into occasional calls. Insects continue their steady presence, but even their sound feels distant, as if it belongs more to the background of the day than to its center. Near the home, life continues in its gentle and practical way. Water is still drawn when needed, slowly and carefully. Small tasks are completed without urgency, each one blending into the next with no clear boundary between them. Inside, the space remains filled with soft light, the kind that filters gently through simple glass and wooden frames, creating a warm and peaceful atmosphere. The fire, if it remains, burns low and steady, more for comfort than necessity. Its presence is quiet now, a faint reminder of warmth rather than a strong source of it. The room feels still and settled, as if it has come to rest within the middle of the day and has no need to move beyond it. There is a natural pause that begins to form here, though it is not forced or planned. The body recognizes it on its own, a gentle slowing that comes after hours of steady effort. Movements become lighter, less continuous. Hands rest more often. Breathing deepens without awareness. This pause is not emptiness. It is fullness in stillness. A quiet holding of time. The land outside remains unchanged in its calm presence. Fields stretch outward in every direction, holding the sun's light evenly across their surfaces. Trees stand steady, their leaves barely moving unless touched by a passing breeze. Everything feels held in place, not frozen, but balanced in a quiet and natural order. Time continues forward, though it is no longer felt as passing in distinct moments. It becomes something softer, something that flows without edges. There is no sense of beginning or end to this part of the day. Only continuation. The body, the land, the air, the light all remain in this steady alignment, moving together in a rhythm that feels both simple and complete. And within this stillness, midday rests fully, holding the world in a calm and even state before the slow and gentle transition toward afternoon begins, as quietly as everything else has come before it. As midday begins to loosen its hold on the land, there is no sudden change, no clear moment where one part of the day ends and another begins. Instead, everything shifts in a way so gradual it is almost only felt rather than seen, like a soft breath that slowly changes shape without drawing attention to itself. The sun remains high, but something in its quality begins to soften ever so slightly, as if the light itself is beginning to grow more thoughtful, more angled, more patient in its descent. The warmth that has filled the world so evenly begins to settle into a quieter form. It is still present, still steady, but no longer as direct as it was at its peak. It rests differently now, touching the land with a gentler hand, spreading across fields and wooden surfaces in a way that feels less intense and more balanced. The air carries this change without announcement, holding onto the calm that has been present all day while subtly preparing for what comes next. Work continues, though it has now fully entered a slower, more reflective rhythm. Movements are no longer shaped by the steady drive of morning or the firm presence of midday, but by a softer sense of continuation. The body responds naturally to this shift, finding a pace that feels sustainable and quiet, as if it has settled into the most comfortable version of itself. Each action is still familiar, still practiced, but now it carries a slight ease that was not as noticeable before. In the fields, the light begins to shift in direction, not yet low, but no longer directly overhead. Shadows, once small and close, begin to lengthen again in a very subtle way, stretching just enough to mark the passage of time. The ground remains warm beneath the sun, but there is a slight cooling at its edges, a gentle contrast that signals the slow turning of the day. The sky remains open and wide, holding its steady blue, though now it feels a little deeper, a little quieter in tone. It does not change quickly. It never does. Instead, it holds its place with patience, allowing the world beneath it to move at its own calm pace. A soft breeze passes through again, slightly more noticeable than before, though still gentle. It moves across the land in long, slow waves, brushing against leaves and grass, stirring the air just enough to be felt without ever becoming strong. It carries with it a faint coolness that contrasts softly with the lingering warmth of the day. The sounds of the world remain subdued. There is no rush of activity, no sharp increase in noise. Instead, everything continues in a quiet balance. Birds call occasionally, not with the energy of morning, but with a softer, more spaced rhythm. Insects maintain their steady presence, forming a low and continuous background that feels almost like part of the air itself. Near the home, the structure of the day remains unchanged in its simplicity. Small tasks are completed as needed, but always in a calm and unhurried way. Water is carried, tools are set aside, spaces are lightly adjusted or tidied without urgency. Inside, the light continues to shift slowly through the room, becoming slightly warmer in tone, slightly longer in its reach. The fire, if still present, remains low and steady, its purpose now more about comfort than necessity. It gives off a faint warmth, just enough to be felt without drawing attention. The room feels balanced between light and shade, between warmth and the beginning hints of coolness that will come later in the day. There is a growing sense of ease in the body now, a quiet release from the earlier steadiness of work. Not fatigue in a heavy sense, but a gentle softening, as if the energy of the morning and midday has naturally spread itself across the hours and now rests evenly within. Movements become less frequent, more spaced apart. Still purposeful, but no longer continuous. This is a time of transition that does not ask to be noticed. It simply exists as part of the natural flow of the day. The land does not change dramatically, the sky does not shift quickly, and the air does not move in sudden ways. Everything remains calm, steady, and gradual. And so the afternoon begins its slow arrival, not as a new state, but as a continuation of everything that has come before it. The light deepens slightly, the shadows lengthen a little more, and the world gently adjusts itself into this next quiet phase of time. Nothing is interrupted. Nothing is broken. Everything simply continues, in the same soft and unbroken rhythm that has carried the day from its first light onward. The afternoon now settles more deeply over the land, not in a way that feels different or separate, but in a way that feels like a natural deepening of everything that has already been unfolding since the first light of morning. The sun has begun its slow and steady descent, though it still remains high enough to fill the world with warmth and clarity. Its light is softer now, more angled, resting across the fields in longer stretches, touching the ground with a gentler presence than before. The air has changed again, though only slightly, in a way that is almost more felt than noticed. It carries a quieter warmth, balanced with the first faint hints of coolness that will grow stronger later. This mixture creates a calm and steady atmosphere, one that feels neither too warm nor too cool, but simply present, as if the day has reached a comfortable middle point and is now holding itself there without effort. Work continues in this softened rhythm, though it no longer carries the steady intensity of earlier hours. The movements of the body are slower now, more spaced, shaped by familiarity rather than effort. There is no urgency in the hands, no pressure in the steps. Everything moves in a way that feels almost natural to the point of being unnoticed, as if the body is simply following a rhythm it has always known. In the fields, the light stretches further now, casting longer shadows that lie gently across the land. These shadows are not dark or heavy, but soft and thin, marking the passage of time in a quiet and unspoken way. The soil beneath the sun holds its warmth, but it begins to cool slightly at the edges, as if preparing for the gradual shift that will come with evening. The sky remains open and steady, its blue deepening just a little more with each passing hour. There are no sudden changes, no clouds rushing in, no breaks in its calm structure. It simply remains, wide and patient, holding the world beneath it in a quiet sense of continuity. A breeze moves through again, slightly more frequent now, though still gentle. It travels across the land in slow waves, touching everything lightly before moving on. It carries a faint coolness that contrasts softly with the remaining warmth of the sun, creating a balanced feeling in the air that is neither too still nor too active. The sounds of the afternoon have grown even more subdued. The earlier activity of the day has faded into a quieter presence. Birds are less frequent in their calls, and even when they do sound, it is soft and distant, blending into the atmosphere rather than rising above it. Insects continue their steady hum, but it feels more like a background layer now, something that exists within the silence rather than breaking it. Near the home, the rhythm of small tasks continues in the same steady and unhurried way. Nothing is rushed. Nothing demands attention beyond its immediate moment. Water is carried when needed, tools are set down carefully, and spaces are adjusted with quiet hands. Inside, the light has shifted further, now holding a warmer tone that stretches across the wooden surfaces and fills the room with a calm, golden softness. The fire, if it still burns, is low and quiet, almost resting. It no longer draws focus but remains present as a steady source of gentle warmth. Its glow is faint, but it gives the space a sense of continuity, as if the heart of the home is still quietly breathing beneath the stillness of the afternoon. There is a deeper sense of calm now, one that feels more settled than earlier in the day. The body moves less frequently, resting more often between actions. Not in exhaustion, but in a natural slowing, as if the energy of the day has spread itself evenly and now allows for longer moments of stillness. These moments are not planned. They simply appear. A pause while standing near a doorway. A quiet breath while looking across the land. A stillness while sitting for a brief time in the warmth of the afternoon light. Each one is small, but together they form a sense of ease that defines this part of the day. Time continues forward, though it is no longer marked by any clear division. There are no boundaries between one moment and the next. Everything blends gently, forming a continuous flow that carries the afternoon deeper into its quiet state. The land remains steady. The sky remains open. The air remains calm. And within this balance, the world moves slowly toward the approaching evening, though nothing announces its arrival yet. It is only felt in the subtle lengthening of shadows, in the softening of light, in the quiet understanding that the day is gently turning. Everything continues. Everything remains. And the afternoon rests fully within its calm and unbroken rhythm. As the afternoon moves quietly forward, there is a gentle and almost unnoticeable turning of the light that signals the slow approach of evening. The sun, once high and steady, now begins its gradual descent toward the edge of the sky, not in any hurried motion, but in a long and patient lowering that feels as natural as breathing. The brightness that once filled the land so fully begins to soften, spreading in wider, calmer tones, touching the fields and trees with a warm, fading glow that feels peaceful rather than fading. The air shifts again, though in a way so subtle it is almost only recognized in hindsight. The warmth of the day is still present, but it no longer holds the same intensity it did at midday. Instead, it begins to loosen, allowing a gentle coolness to enter from the edges of the world. This balance between warmth and coolness creates a quiet comfort, as if the land itself is slowly exhaling after a long and steady breath. Work, which has continued throughout the day in its calm and steady rhythm, begins to ease even further. The movements of the body grow slower, not from exhaustion, but from a natural sense of completion. Tasks are finished one by one, without urgency, each ending flowing gently into the next. There is no pressure to continue beyond what is needed. Everything moves toward closure in its own time, without force or interruption. In the fields, the light has changed noticeably now. It is no longer overhead, but angled, stretching long and soft across the land. Shadows have grown deeper, though still gentle at their edges, lying across the ground like quiet reminders of the passing hours. The soil, warmed throughout the day, begins to release that warmth slowly, allowing the coolness of approaching evening to settle in. The sky holds a deeper tone now, still open, still wide, but shifting into softer shades. The blue becomes less bright, more muted, carrying hints of warmth near the horizon where the sun continues its descent. There are no sharp changes, no sudden transitions, only a slow and steady deepening of color that reflects the calm rhythm of the day. A light breeze moves more consistently now, though it remains gentle. It passes through trees and fields with a slow, flowing motion, bringing a faint coolness that contrasts softly with the lingering warmth of the sun. It feels refreshing, but never strong, never disruptive. It simply moves through the space, adding to the quiet balance of the afternoon. The sounds of the world begin to soften even more. The daytime activity has faded into a quieter presence. Birds are less frequent now, their calls spaced further apart, blending into the background of the fading light. Insects continue their steady hum, but even this feels more distant, as if the entire world has lowered its voice in preparation for evening. Near the home, the final tasks of the day are carried out in a calm and unhurried manner. Tools are gathered and placed away, water is brought in for later use, and small spaces are tidied with simple, practiced motions. Inside, the light that fills the room has grown warmer and deeper, casting long, soft shapes across the wooden surfaces and creating a feeling of quiet enclosure. The fire, if still present, begins to feel more central again as the outside world slowly cools. Its glow is steady and low, offering a soft warmth that gently balances the cooling air that enters through open spaces. The room feels increasingly separate from the outside now, not in isolation, but in comfort, as if it is gently holding onto the last warmth of the day. There is a noticeable stillness that begins to form in the body during this time. Not sudden, not heavy, but gradual. Movements become less frequent, pauses become longer, and the need for action slowly fades into a quiet sense of rest. It is not fatigue in a sharp sense, but a natural easing, as if the day's energy has gently spread itself out and now settles evenly within. This stillness is not emptiness. It is completion. A quiet recognition that the day has been fully lived in its own slow and steady way. Time continues to move forward, but it no longer feels divided into clear parts. The afternoon blends seamlessly into the early signs of evening, with no boundary between them. The change is only in tone, in light, in air, in the way everything feels slightly more settled than before. The land remains calm, unchanged in its quiet presence. The sky continues its slow deepening. The air carries its gentle balance of warmth and coolness. And within this gradual shift, the day moves toward evening without interruption, without urgency, holding on to the same steady rhythm that has carried it from the very beginning. Everything continues. Everything softens. And the world prepares, quietly and gently, for night. Evening settles in the way it always does, not as a sudden arrival, but as a slow and patient unfolding that gently replaces the fading afternoon light. The sun now rests close to the horizon, its glow stretched thin and warm across the land, touching the fields, the trees, and the simple wooden home with a soft golden tone that feels almost like memory rather than brightness. Everything it touches seems quieter now, as if the world itself is lowering its voice in response to the changing sky. The air has grown cooler, though not cold, carrying a lightness that contrasts with the warmth that still lingers from the day. It moves gently through open spaces, slipping between trees and around corners of the home, bringing with it the first clear sense that night is slowly approaching. There is no urgency in this change, only a steady and natural transition that feels deeply familiar, as if it has always been this way and always will be. Inside the home, the atmosphere becomes more enclosed and comforting as the light outside begins to fade. The fire, now more important than before, glows with a steady, gentle presence. Its flames are not large or active, but calm and controlled, casting a soft flickering light that moves slowly across the wooden walls and simple furnishings. Shadows deepen in the corners, but they do not feel heavy or sharp. Instead, they feel soft, almost protective, as if the room is quietly gathering itself for the night ahead. The sounds of the outside world continue to fade. The birds have nearly gone silent now, their presence reduced to only the occasional distant call. Insects remain, but even their steady hum feels more distant, blending into the background of the evening rather than standing out within it. The wind, when it passes, does so in slow and gentle waves, carrying the last traces of the day's warmth as it moves across the land. There is a sense of slowing in everything now. Movements within the home become more deliberate, more measured, not out of necessity but out of habit and comfort. Small evening tasks are completed quietly, water is set aside, simple preparations are made for the night, and spaces are arranged in a calm and familiar order. Nothing is rushed. Nothing feels unfinished. Everything happens as part of a well-known rhythm that requires no thought to follow. The light outside continues to diminish, shifting from gold to deeper ember, then gradually into softer tones of gray and blue as the sun finally lowers beyond the horizon. The sky holds onto its color for a while longer, refusing to fade completely, as if it too is lingering in the quiet beauty of transition. Gradually, though, even this light begins to soften, giving way to the early presence of night. Inside, the fire becomes the main source of warmth and light. Its glow feels steady and calm, filling the room with a gentle radiance that feels both familiar and grounding. The warmth it gives is not strong, but enough to hold back the coolness that now seeps in from the outside world. The space feels smaller in this light, more contained, more peaceful, as if it has gently withdrawn from the larger world and now exists in its own quiet stillness. The body, after a long and steady day, begins to settle more fully into rest. Not in a sudden way, but in a gradual easing that mirrors everything else about this time of day. Movements slow, thoughts quiet, and a sense of completion begins to spread through both mind and body. There is no pressure left, no task waiting with urgency. Only the gentle awareness that the day has passed in its full and natural course. Outside, the last light of evening lingers briefly at the edge of the horizon before finally fading. The sky deepens into darker shades, first soft blue, then muted gray, and finally into the early presence of night. Stars begin to appear once more, faint at first, then slowly becoming more visible as the darkness settles across the land. The transition is seamless, quiet, unbroken, and deeply calm. Inside the home, the fire continues to burn low and steady, its light flickering gently across the stillness of the room. The atmosphere is warm, enclosed, and peaceful, holding everything within it in a quiet balance between light and shadow, between warmth and the coolness that waits outside. There is nothing more that needs to be done. Nothing more that needs to be reached for. Only stillness remains. And within that stillness, the evening completes its slow arrival, carrying the world gently into night, just as it has done every day before, and just as it will continue to do again. Night has now fully settled over the land, not as something that arrives suddenly, but as something that gently spreads and holds everything in its quiet embrace. The sky above is deep and wide, filled with steady stars that seem to rest in place rather than move, each one faintly glowing in the distance like a quiet reminder of how still the world can become. The horizon no longer holds the warmth of sunset. It has softened completely, blending into darker tones that stretch evenly across everything below. The air outside has cooled further now, becoming crisp in a soft and natural way that carries no discomfort. It moves lightly through the fields, through the trees, and across the quiet spaces between homes, but even this movement feels slow, almost careful, as if the night itself is walking gently across the land without disturbing anything that rests beneath it. There is no noise that rises above the calm. Everything has settled into a deep and steady quiet. Inside the home, the fire remains the center of warmth and light, though it has grown lower, its flames reduced to a calm and steady glow. It does not flicker wildly or burn brightly anymore. Instead, it rests in a gentle rhythm, casting a soft amber light that moves slowly across the room. The shadows it creates are long but peaceful, shifting only slightly with the faint movement of air within the space. The room feels fully enclosed now, separated from the wider world not by distance, but by warmth and stillness. The wooden walls hold the quiet heat from the fire, and the air inside carries a balance between comfort and calm. There is nothing unfinished here. Nothing waiting to be done. Everything has already moved through its natural course and now rests in completion. The sounds of the outside world are almost entirely gone. Even the faint presence of insects has quieted, leaving behind a silence that feels full rather than empty. Occasionally, a soft movement of wind passes through the night, brushing against the edges of the house or moving gently through the trees, but even this sound is distant and soft, blending into the larger stillness rather than breaking it. Within the home, movement slows even further. The final small routines of the evening have long since been completed, and now there is only quiet presence. A chair near the fire, a table resting in dim light, the simple arrangement of a space that has been used throughout the day and now returns to stillness once more. Everything is familiar, everything is unchanged, and everything feels settled. The body begins to ease more deeply into rest. Not in a sudden transition, but in a gradual softening that feels almost like drifting. Muscles relax fully now, breathing slows into a steady rhythm, and the awareness of the day fades gently into the background. There is no effort in this release. It happens naturally, as if the body has been waiting for this moment since the first light of morning. Outside, the night continues its steady presence. The stars remain unchanged, distant, and calm. The land beneath them is still, holding no movement that disturbs the quiet. Fields lie in complete rest, trees stand without motion, and the paths between places are empty and undisturbed. The entire world feels as though it has paused, not in stopping, but in peaceful continuation. Inside, the fire begins to fade further, its glow becoming softer, more faint, until it is no longer a strong source of light but only a gentle suggestion of warmth. The room grows darker, though not uncomfortable. It is a darkness that feels natural, familiar, and deeply calm. Shapes become less distinct, but the sense of space remains steady and reassuring. There is no awareness of time now. Only stillness. Only rest. The body lies fully at ease, no longer holding on to the movements of the day. Thoughts, if they remain, are quiet and distant, drifting without direction. Sleep deepens slowly, not as an interruption, but as a continuation of everything that has come before it. The night holds everything gently in place. The home. The land. The sky. All resting together in a quiet balance that requires nothing more than presence. And as the hours pass in this deep and steady calm, the world continues its silent rhythm, waiting patiently for the first faint return of morning light, which will once again arrive in the same soft and unhurried way it always has. Everything rests. Everything is still. And the night continues, endlessly calm, endlessly quiet. The night deepens even further now, moving into a level of stillness that feels almost complete, as if the world has gently folded itself into rest and chosen to remain there without interruption. The sky above is fully dark, but not empty. It is filled with countless small points of light, steady and distant, each one holding its place without movement or change. They do not shine brightly or demand attention. They simply exist, quietly present, like a calm memory spread across the vastness of the sky. The land below is even quieter than before. Fields lie in complete rest, no longer touched by movement or sound. The trees stand still, their forms softened by darkness, blending gently into the surrounding night. The paths that connected one place to another during the day are now barely visible, resting beneath the same calm darkness that covers everything equally. There is no distinction here between near and far, between home and field, between open land and enclosed space. Everything is part of the same quiet whole. Inside the home, the fire has now reduced to a very faint glow. It is no longer a source of light in any strong sense, but rather a soft presence of warmth that lingers near the hearth. A few embers remain, dim and steady, holding on to the memory of flame without movement. The room is almost completely dark now, but it is not a darkness that feels empty or heavy. It feels gentle, familiar, and deeply still, as if it belongs exactly where it is. The air inside is calm and slightly cool, yet balanced by the last traces of warmth that remain in the wooden walls and floor. The space feels enclosed in a comforting way, protected from the outside world not by force, but by quiet separation. There is no sense of exposure here, only a steady and peaceful shelter that holds the night softly within it. No sounds break the silence. There is only stillness. Outside, the wind, if it moves at all, does so in the most subtle way, passing lightly over the land without disturbing anything it touches. It is not strong enough to be noticed clearly, only enough to be sensed in the faintest possible way, like a passing thought that never fully forms. Even this movement fades quickly, returning the world to its deeper calm. Inside, the body rests fully now, having released the final traces of the day. There is no tension left, no lingering awareness of tasks or time. Sleep has deepened into something steady and uninterrupted, like a slow current that carries everything gently forward without resistance. Breathing continues in a soft, even rhythm, steady and unchanging. Time, in this state, no longer feels present. It no longer divides itself into moments or hours. It simply flows, unnoticed, unmarked, and unmeasured. The night continues in its long and quiet expansion, holding the world in a stillness that feels complete. There is no expectation of change, no anticipation of movement. Everything remains as it is, held in a balance that feels both natural and infinite. The home remains warm enough to feel safe, yet quiet enough to feel fully at rest. The last trace of firelight fades even further, leaving behind only the memory of warmth rather than its visible presence. Shadows, if they exist at all, no longer move. They simply settle into place and remain there, as still as everything else. And in this deep and uninterrupted calm, the world continues its silent rest, untouched by urgency, untouched by change, holding on to the night with a quiet patience that stretches endlessly forward. There is nothing more that needs to happen. Nothing more that needs to be seen. Only the gentle continuation of stillness, spreading across the land, across the sky, and across time itself. And so the night remains. Soft. Endless. And completely calm. The night continues in a very slow and quiet way, so slow that it almost feels like nothing is changing at all, and yet everything is still gently moving forward in the most natural and unnoticeable rhythm. The sky remains dark, holding its wide and open shape above the land, with small stars scattered across it, steady and unmoving, as if they have always been there and will always remain in the same calm position without needing to go anywhere or do anything at all. The land below stays completely still, and in this stillness there is no tension, no activity, and no sound that rises or falls in any noticeable way. Fields rest in complete quiet, and the soil that was worked during the day now simply lies undisturbed, holding the memory of sunlight but no longer needing to respond to it. Trees remain in place, their shapes blending softly into the darkness, not moving unless a very light breeze passes through them, and even then the movement is so small and gentle that it barely feels like movement at all. Inside the home, the space remains warm enough to feel comfortable, though the fire has now almost completely faded into a very faint and quiet glow that sits deep within the hearth. It is not really a flame anymore, just a soft presence of warmth that slowly continues to disappear in the most gradual way possible, without any sudden change or noticeable ending. The room is dark, but it is a calm kind of darkness, the kind that feels familiar and peaceful rather than empty or strange. Everything inside the house feels settled now, as if the entire space has come to a full stop after a long and steady day, even though nothing truly stopped suddenly. It all simply slowed down little by little until it reached this point of complete stillness. The wooden walls, the floor, the furniture, and every simple object inside the room remain in place without any movement, holding the quiet atmosphere of the night in a way that feels natural and unchanged. Outside, there is still no real sound that can be clearly noticed. If anything moves, it moves in such a soft and distant way that it blends completely into the silence rather than breaking it. The wind, if it passes at all, does so very gently, almost as if it is only passing through without intention, touching the land lightly and then disappearing again without leaving any trace behind. The body, now fully at rest, continues to remain in a deep and steady sleep that does not shift or change in any noticeable way. Breathing stays slow and even, and there is no sense of effort in any movement, because there is no movement that needs to happen. Everything is already in a state of complete rest, and that rest continues without interruption. Time itself feels extremely slow here, so slow that it almost loses its meaning entirely. There is no clear beginning or ending to anything in this moment, only a long and continuous stillness that stretches forward without drawing attention to itself. It does not feel like something is happening or not happening, it simply feels like everything is resting in its place without needing anything more. The night does not push forward or hold back. It simply continues in the same steady condition it has already reached, without change, without urgency, and without any need for direction. Everything remains quiet, and that quietness does not feel temporary, but instead feels like it belongs completely to this moment in time. Inside the home, nothing shifts or changes. The air remains still, the darkness remains soft, and the faint warmth that once came from the fire slowly fades even further, becoming almost unnoticeable. The room does not require light, sound, or movement, because there is nothing that needs to be done within it. It simply exists in this calm state, holding the night gently. And so the world continues in this very slow and steady way, with no interruption and no change in direction. Everything remains as it is, resting quietly under the night sky, as if the entire world has agreed to remain still for a long, uninterrupted stretch of time. Nothing new begins. Nothing ends. Everything simply continues in silence. The night continues to stretch forward in its same quiet and steady way, without any clear sense of change or movement, as if time itself has softened and slowed down so much that it no longer feels like something that passes quickly or noticeably. Everything remains in place, and everything remains calm, holding the same deep and gentle stillness that has already been present for a long time. The sky above stays dark and wide, filled with the same small, distant stars that do not shift or move in any visible way. They remain steady, almost like quiet points of light that simply exist without needing to change or respond to anything below them. There is no brightness that interrupts the darkness, only a soft and balanced night that feels complete in itself. On the ground, the land continues to rest without any disturbance. Fields remain still, holding the quiet memory of the day that passed, but no longer showing any signs of activity. The soil is calm, the grass is motionless unless touched very gently by air, and even then the movement is so soft that it feels almost imagined rather than seen. Everything feels evenly settled, as if the entire landscape has reached a state where nothing more is required from it. Inside the home, the darkness is steady and familiar. The fire, which once provided warmth and light, has now almost completely disappeared, leaving behind only the faintest trace of warmth deep within the hearth. It is no longer something that can be clearly seen, only something that is quietly felt in a very subtle way, as if the memory of heat still lingers in the air. The room itself is calm, and the wooden structure holds this calm without effort, keeping the space enclosed and peaceful. There is no movement inside the house that stands out from the stillness. Everything is resting in its place, and even the smallest details of the room feel as if they belong fully to this quiet moment. The furniture, the walls, the floor, and every simple object remain unchanged, forming a space that feels steady and undisturbed. Nothing needs to be adjusted or corrected, because everything is already settled. Outside, the night remains silent in a way that feels very deep and continuous. If any sound exists, it is so soft and distant that it blends completely into the background of the stillness. The wind, if it moves at all, does so in a very light and barely noticeable way, passing through the land without leaving any clear impression. It feels more like a gentle presence than a force, something that exists but does not interfere with anything else. Inside, the body continues to rest in a calm and steady state of sleep. There is no change in rhythm, no interruption in stillness, only a continuous and peaceful state of rest that feels natural and complete. Breathing remains slow and even, and there is no sense of effort or awareness that needs to be maintained. Everything is simply at ease. Time feels even more distant now, almost as if it has lost its shape entirely. There are no clear moments that stand apart from each other, only a long and uninterrupted flow of stillness that continues forward without being measured or noticed. It does not feel like something is happening, and it does not feel like something is ending. It simply feels like a continuous presence of quiet. The night holds everything in a balanced and steady way, without pressure or movement. The home remains warm in its own subtle way, the land remains still under the open sky, and the entire world feels as if it has gently paused in a state of deep and peaceful rest. Nothing interrupts this moment. Nothing disturbs it. Everything continues in the same slow and quiet rhythm, without change and without direction, as if the world itself has chosen to remain in calm stillness for as long as the night lasts. And so the silence carries on, steady and unbroken, resting over everything equally, without beginning and without end. The night now feels even deeper than before, not because something has changed suddenly, but because everything has slowly settled into a more complete and uninterrupted stillness. It is the kind of night where time feels stretched out so evenly that it becomes difficult to sense its passing at all. Everything feels held in place, gently and steadily, as if the entire world has lowered itself into a long and quiet pause. The sky remains unchanged in its wide, dark presence. Stars are still there, small and steady, scattered across the vast openness above, giving a faint sense of distance that feels calm rather than empty. They do not move in any way that can be noticed. They simply remain, like quiet companions to the stillness below, offering a soft and consistent presence that does not demand attention. On the land, everything continues to rest without interruption. Fields that were full of activity during the day now lie completely still, their surfaces calm and undisturbed. The shapes of trees and fences blend gently into the darkness, forming soft outlines that are visible only in the faintest sense. There is no motion that draws the eye, no sound that breaks the silence, only a deep and even quiet that covers everything equally. Inside the home, the fire has now almost completely disappeared, leaving behind only the memory of warmth rather than any visible light or movement. The hearth holds a faint trace of heat deep within it, but even that is slowly fading, becoming less noticeable with each passing moment. The room itself is dark, but it is a familiar kind of darkness, one that feels safe and natural, shaped by the presence of rest rather than absence. All objects inside the home remain in their places, unchanged and still. The furniture, the simple belongings, the wooden surfaces, all of it rests in a quiet order that feels complete and undisturbed. There is no need for adjustment or movement. Everything has already settled into its final position for the night. Outside, the air is calm and slightly cool, though not uncomfortable. It moves so gently that it is almost impossible to notice unless it is very still. When it does pass, it does so without direction or force, touching the land lightly before fading again into the silence. It feels more like a presence than a movement, something that exists quietly without affecting anything around it. Inside, the body remains in deep and steady sleep. There is no change in rhythm, no shift in awareness, only a continuous state of rest that feels complete in every way. Breathing continues at a slow and even pace, steady and unbroken, as if it has found a natural balance that requires no effort to maintain. Everything within the body feels calm, relaxed, and fully at ease. Time continues to feel distant, almost unimportant in this state of stillness. It does not divide itself into moments or hours anymore. Instead, it stretches forward in a soft and unbroken flow, without clear beginning or end. Nothing feels urgent, nothing feels separate. Everything exists in the same quiet condition. The night holds this entire scene in a steady and gentle balance. The home, the land, the sky, and everything within them remain in a shared stillness that feels both natural and complete. There is no interruption, no movement that breaks the calm, only a continuous presence of quiet that remains unchanged. And so the world continues to rest in this deep and even silence, without disturbance, without direction, and without end, holding everything softly in place as the night carries on in its slow and peaceful way. The night now feels like it has fully settled into its deepest and most complete form of quiet, where everything seems to exist in a state of long, unbroken stillness that does not ask for attention and does not move toward anything new. It is a stillness that feels natural, almost like it has always been here, surrounding the land, the sky, and every small space in between without effort or change. The sky remains wide and dark, holding its steady arrangement of distant stars that continue to glow faintly, each one holding its place with calm consistency. There is no brightness that increases or fades in any noticeable way. The stars remain as they are, small points of light resting in a vast and quiet openness, giving the night a gentle sense of depth without disturbing its silence. Below, the land is completely still. Fields that once carried the movement of daily life now rest under a smooth layer of darkness, their shapes softened and quiet. Trees stand in place without motion, their outlines blending into the night so gently that they feel more like part of the darkness itself than separate objects within it. Everything is quiet, everything is still, and everything feels evenly held in place. Inside the home, the fire has now faded almost entirely. Only a faint suggestion of warmth remains within the hearth, a memory of heat rather than something actively present. The room is dark, but it is a familiar darkness, one that feels settled and calm, shaped by many nights like this before. It does not feel empty. It feels complete. The air inside is still and balanced, neither too cool nor too warm, resting in a quiet state that feels comfortable and steady. Nothing moves within the room in any noticeable way. The wooden walls, the floor, the simple objects that fill the space all remain exactly where they are, unchanged and undisturbed. The entire room feels as if it has entered a long and peaceful pause. Outside, there is no sound that rises above the silence. If anything moves, it does so in such a soft and distant way that it blends completely into the stillness, becoming part of the night rather than breaking it. The wind, if present at all, moves gently and briefly, passing over the land without leaving any lasting trace. It is quiet enough that it almost feels like it is not there at all. Inside, the body remains fully at rest in a deep and steady sleep. There is no awareness of movement, no sense of time passing, only a continuous state of calm that feels complete and unchanging. Breathing remains slow and even, steady without interruption, as if the body has naturally settled into a rhythm that requires no thought or effort to maintain. Time itself feels almost dissolved in this stillness. It no longer feels like something that moves forward in clear steps. Instead, it becomes a long and continuous flow that stretches without edges or boundaries, making it difficult to sense where anything begins or ends. Everything feels connected within the same quiet presence. The night continues to hold everything gently in place. The home remains quiet and dark, the land remains still and open, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no tension anywhere, no shift that breaks the calm, only a steady and continuous silence that fills every part of the world equally. Nothing calls for attention. Nothing changes direction. Everything simply continues in this soft and unbroken state of rest, as if the entire world has agreed to remain still for as long as the night continues. And in this deep and quiet balance, the silence remains, steady and endless, carrying everything forward in its calm and gentle rhythm without interruption or end. The night continues in its long, unbroken stillness, as if it has now fully settled into itself and has no intention of becoming anything different. Everything feels evenly quiet, not in a way that is empty, but in a way that feels complete, like a long breath that has been slowly released and now simply rests in place. The sky remains wide and dark, holding its steady arrangement of distant stars, each one faint and patient, unchanged in position or brightness, as if time has chosen to pause its attention there. There is no movement across the land that can be clearly noticed. Fields remain in their quiet rest, no longer carrying the memory of activity in any visible way, only the faint suggestion of what the day once held. Trees stand in soft outlines, their forms blending gently into the darkness, becoming part of the night rather than standing apart from it. Everything feels unified in stillness, as though the entire landscape has softened into one continuous, quiet presence. Inside the home, the fire has now nearly disappeared completely. Only the faintest trace of warmth remains within the hearth, not enough to create light or movement, but enough to suggest that something once burned there earlier in the evening. The room is dark, but it is a calm and familiar darkness, one that feels natural rather than uncertain. It holds the space gently, without pressure, without interruption. The air inside the house is still and balanced, resting in a quiet condition that feels unchanged for a long stretch of time. There is no noticeable shift in temperature, no movement that draws attention, only a steady and even atmosphere that surrounds everything within the room. The wooden walls, the floor, and all the simple objects remain exactly as they were, unchanged and settled, forming a space that feels complete in its stillness. Outside, the silence continues without break. If there is any sound at all, it is so distant and faint that it becomes part of the background of the night rather than something separate from it. The wind, if it passes, does so in a way that is almost imperceptible, moving lightly across the land without disturbing anything it touches. It comes and goes without leaving any trace, as if it was never fully there to begin with. Inside, the body remains in deep and steady sleep, fully immersed in rest. There is no awareness of time, no sense of direction or change, only a continuous and gentle stillness that holds everything in place. Breathing continues in a slow, even rhythm, steady and uninterrupted, as if it has found a natural balance that does not need to be adjusted or noticed. Time itself feels distant now, almost like something that belongs to another layer of existence. It no longer feels divided into moments or hours. Instead, it stretches out in a soft and continuous flow that has no clear edges. Everything exists within this flow without separation, without distinction, simply moving forward in a quiet and unmarked way. The night holds everything in a steady and peaceful balance. The home remains dark and calm, the land remains still and open, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no sense of movement toward anything new, only a deep and continuous stillness that fills every part of the world equally. Nothing interrupts this calm. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting quietly within the same gentle rhythm that has carried the entire day into night and now carries the night itself forward without change. And so the silence continues, steady and endless, holding the world in a soft and unbroken state of rest. The night has now reached a point where it feels less like a phase of time and more like a long, continuous state of quiet existence, where everything simply remains as it is without any need to shift or move forward in a noticeable way. It is a calm that feels very even, very steady, and very complete, as if the world has finally settled into its deepest and most natural form of rest. The sky continues to stretch wide above the land, dark and open, holding the same quiet pattern of distant stars that do not change in brightness or position. They remain faint and steady, almost blending into the background of the night itself, giving a soft sense of depth without drawing attention. There is no variation in their presence that can be felt in any clear way. They simply remain, as they have been for a long time, quietly marking the stillness of the sky. Below, the land remains fully at rest. Fields, once active during the day, now lie in complete silence, their surfaces smooth and undisturbed. The shapes of trees and open ground are present only in faint outlines, softened by darkness and distance. There is no movement that can be clearly observed, no shift that changes the view in any meaningful way. Everything is held in the same steady position, as if the entire landscape has agreed to remain still for an extended, uninterrupted stretch of time. Inside the home, the fire has now faded almost entirely into nothing more than a memory of warmth. The hearth holds only the faintest trace of what once was a living flame, now reduced to a quiet and inactive presence that no longer produces light or movement. The room is fully dark, but the darkness feels familiar and calm, not empty or uncertain. It is a darkness that belongs naturally to the space, one that feels settled rather than imposed. The air inside remains still and even, with no noticeable changes in temperature or movement. It rests gently throughout the room, filling the space in a way that feels balanced and unchanged. The wooden structure of the house holds this quiet atmosphere steadily, creating a sense of enclosure that is soft and natural. Nothing within the room shifts or changes position. Everything remains exactly where it is, in a state of complete and quiet rest. Outside, the silence continues without interruption. There are no sounds that rise above it, no clear movements that break its surface. If anything moves at all, it does so in such a subtle and distant way that it becomes part of the silence itself rather than standing apart from it. The wind, if it passes, does so gently and briefly, without direction or force, fading almost as soon as it arrives. Inside, the body remains fully immersed in deep sleep. There is no awareness of surroundings, no sense of time or change, only a steady and continuous state of rest that feels natural and complete. Breathing continues in a slow and even rhythm, steady without interruption, as if it has reached a point where it no longer needs adjustment or attention. Everything within the body feels calm, settled, and still. Time continues to feel distant and undefined. It no longer divides itself into moments or hours in any noticeable way. Instead, it flows in a long and uninterrupted continuity that has no clear beginning or end. Everything exists within this flow without separation, without distinction, moving forward in a way that is steady but unmarked. The night holds everything in a quiet and balanced state. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no pressure, no urgency, no direction that pulls anything forward. Only a continuous and gentle stillness that fills every part of the world equally. Nothing disturbs this calm. Nothing interrupts it. Everything simply remains as it is, resting within the same soft and steady rhythm that has carried it through the entire day and into the deepest part of night. And so the silence continues, unbroken and endless, holding the world in a peaceful state of complete and uninterrupted rest. The night has now settled into a stillness so deep and even that it feels as though the world has gently paused without ever truly stopping, holding everything in a long and quiet balance that does not ask for change or movement. It is the kind of stillness that feels complete in every direction, stretching across the land, through the air, and up into the wide openness of the sky, where nothing shifts in any noticeable way and everything remains softly in place. Above, the sky continues its slow and steady presence, dark and vast, with faint stars scattered across it like distant points of calm light. They remain unchanged, neither growing brighter nor fading, simply existing in their quiet arrangement. There is no movement that can be traced between them, no pattern that shifts or breaks. They feel steady, almost timeless, as if they belong to a layer of existence that does not participate in the passing of the night below. The land beneath remains in complete rest. Fields lie still, carrying no trace of motion or activity, their surfaces blending gently into the darkness. Trees stand quietly, their forms softened and simplified by the night, becoming part of the same calm presence that surrounds everything. There are no signs of life moving across the open spaces, no sounds rising from the ground. Everything feels evenly quiet, as though the entire landscape has entered a shared state of deep rest. Inside the home, the fire has now fully faded into silence. What remains is only the faintest impression of where warmth once existed, no longer visible, no longer active, but still part of the memory of the space. The hearth itself is still, holding no movement, no glow, only a quiet emptiness that feels natural and familiar. The room is completely dark now, yet the darkness does not feel unfamiliar or unsettling. It feels settled, gentle, and deeply calm. The air inside the house remains steady and unchanged, resting evenly throughout the space. There is no shift in temperature that can be clearly noticed, no movement that disturbs the stillness. It simply remains in a quiet balance, held within the wooden structure of the home that has long become part of this nightly rhythm. Everything inside the room feels stable, as if it has reached a point where no further adjustment is needed. Outside, the silence continues in its uninterrupted form. There are no sounds that rise above it, no clear movements that break its surface. Even the faintest presence of wind, if it passes at all, does so in such a soft and distant way that it becomes part of the silence rather than something separate from it. It moves without direction, without force, and disappears almost as soon as it is felt. Inside, the body remains in deep and continuous sleep, fully absorbed in rest without any awareness of time or space. There is no sense of waking or dreaming in any defined way, only a steady and unbroken state of calm that holds everything together. Breathing continues in a slow and even rhythm, quiet and consistent, requiring no thought or attention. The body rests completely, with no tension remaining anywhere. Time itself feels almost dissolved now, no longer experienced as a sequence of passing moments, but as a single continuous presence that stretches without interruption. There are no clear boundaries between one moment and the next. Everything flows together in a soft and uninterrupted way, without distinction or separation. The night continues to hold this entire scene in a balanced and steady calm. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no direction that pulls anything forward, only a continuous stillness that fills every part of existence equally. Nothing interrupts this state. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting quietly within a deep and unbroken rhythm that has continued since the night began and will continue until the first faint return of morning light. And so the silence remains, steady and endless, holding the world in a calm and complete state of rest. The night now feels as though it has reached its deepest and most settled point, where even the idea of change seems far away, and everything exists in a long, continuous stillness that stretches gently across time without interruption. It is a stillness that does not feel empty, but full in its own quiet way, as if the entire world has softened into a single, calm breath that continues without effort. The sky remains wide and dark above everything, holding its familiar arrangement of faint stars that continue to rest in their distant places. They do not shift or flicker in any noticeable way, nor do they draw attention to themselves. Instead, they remain steady and quiet, forming a soft and unchanging pattern that feels almost timeless. There is no sense of movement between them, no sense of distance changing. They simply exist, calmly and evenly, as part of the night's deep presence. Below, the land continues in complete rest. Fields lie still, their surfaces blending gently into the darkness so smoothly that edges and boundaries begin to feel less distinct. Trees stand quietly, their shapes softened further by the night, no longer appearing as separate forms but as part of the larger stillness that surrounds everything. There is no motion anywhere across the open spaces, no activity that breaks the calm. Everything feels evenly settled, as if the land itself has chosen to remain in this state of deep quiet. Inside the home, the fire has now fully disappeared, leaving behind only the faint memory of warmth that once filled the room earlier in the evening. The hearth is dark and still, holding no glow, no movement, only the quiet presence of what once was. The room itself is fully dark now, but the darkness feels natural and familiar, shaped by many nights like this one. It does not feel uncertain or heavy. It feels calm, stable, and complete. The air inside remains steady and unchanged, resting in a quiet balance that fills every corner of the room without shifting or moving. There is no noticeable change in temperature, no movement that breaks the stillness. Everything feels evenly held in place, as if the space has reached a natural point of rest where nothing more is required. The wooden structure of the home supports this calm atmosphere, holding it gently without effort. Outside, the silence continues without interruption. There are no sounds that rise above it, no clear movements that disturb its surface. Even the faintest suggestion of wind, if it passes at all, does so in such a subtle and distant way that it feels more like a passing presence than an actual force. It moves lightly across the land and then disappears, leaving no trace behind. Inside, the body remains fully immersed in deep and steady sleep. There is no awareness of time, no sense of surroundings, no distinction between one moment and the next. Everything is held in a continuous state of rest that feels natural and complete. Breathing continues in a slow, even rhythm, steady and uninterrupted, requiring no attention or adjustment. The body remains fully at ease, with no tension or movement left within it. Time itself feels almost as if it has stopped being something that can be measured or followed. It no longer divides itself into hours or moments in any meaningful way. Instead, it flows as a single, unbroken presence that stretches forward without edges or direction. Everything exists within this flow equally, without separation or distinction. The night continues to hold everything in a quiet and balanced state. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no shift that pulls anything forward, only a deep and continuous stillness that fills every part of the world equally. Nothing disturbs this calm. Nothing interrupts it. Everything simply remains as it is, resting within the same gentle and steady rhythm that has carried the entire day into night and now carries the night itself forward in complete and unbroken silence. And so the world continues to rest, steady and endless, held in a quiet state of calm that does not fade, does not change, and does not end. The night now feels even more still, as if it has gradually softened itself into a deeper and quieter version of what it already was, without any clear moment of change. Everything continues in the same calm rhythm, but now that rhythm feels even more distant, more spread out, as though the world has slowed its pace to the gentlest possible movement and decided to remain there without resistance. The sky remains dark and wide, stretching endlessly above the land in a steady and unbroken presence. The stars are still there, faint and patient, holding their positions without any visible change. They do not feel near or far in any meaningful way anymore, only present, like small points of calm light that exist quietly within the vastness. Nothing about them shifts or draws attention. They remain steady, unchanged, and evenly placed across the sky. Below, the land continues its deep and uninterrupted rest. Fields are still, their shapes softened further by the darkness, blending into one continuous surface of quiet land. Trees stand without movement, their outlines faint and calm, no longer clearly separated from the night around them. Everything feels gently merged into the same stillness, as if the entire landscape has relaxed into a single, unified state of rest. Inside the home, there is no longer any trace of fire or glow. The hearth is completely dark now, not even holding a faint suggestion of warmth that can be noticed. The room exists in full darkness, but it is not a darkness that feels unfamiliar or empty. It feels natural, as if it belongs fully to the space, as if it has always been there and will remain without needing to change. The air inside is steady and quiet, with no noticeable movement or shift. It rests evenly throughout the room, filling it without interruption or variation. There is no sense of temperature changing, no sense of pressure or motion. Everything is balanced in a simple and natural stillness that feels complete. The wooden structure of the house holds this atmosphere gently, as it has done many times before. Outside, the silence remains uninterrupted. There are no sounds that rise above it, no clear movements that break its surface. If anything exists within it, it does so in such a faint and distant way that it becomes part of the silence rather than something separate from it. Even the wind, if it moves at all, does so in a way that is almost unnoticeable, passing through without direction and fading quickly into the night. Inside, the body remains fully at rest in deep sleep. There is no awareness of anything beyond the state of calm. No thoughts that form clearly, no sense of passing time, only a continuous and steady rest that feels natural and complete. Breathing remains slow and even, consistent without effort or interruption, as if it has reached a rhythm that no longer requires attention. Time continues to lose its structure in the stillness. It no longer feels like something divided into moments or hours. Instead, it becomes a long and continuous presence that stretches forward without edges or clear direction. Everything exists within it equally, without separation or distinction, moving gently through a quiet and unmarked flow. The night holds everything in a deep and balanced calm. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no shift that changes the direction of anything, only a steady and continuous stillness that fills every part of existence equally. Nothing interrupts this calm. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting quietly within a soft and unbroken rhythm that has continued from the beginning of the night and now carries forward without end. And so the silence remains, steady and complete, holding the world in a deep and peaceful state of rest. The night has now settled into something even quieter than before, not because anything has changed suddenly, but because everything has continued long enough in stillness that it begins to feel like the natural state of the world. The silence is no longer something that arrives or spreads. It is simply there, already complete, already holding everything in place. The sky remains open and dark, stretching far in every direction without interruption. The stars continue their faint and steady presence, unchanged in brightness, unchanged in position, as if they are part of something permanent and unmoving. They feel distant, yet familiar, like quiet points of light that belong to a world that does not shift or hurry. Nothing in the sky suggests urgency or movement. It simply remains, wide and calm. Below, the land rests in the same unbroken stillness. Fields lie flat and quiet, their forms blending more deeply into the darkness as the night continues. Trees stand without motion, their shapes now barely distinguishable unless closely observed, and even then they feel like part of the same quiet presence that fills the entire landscape. There is no separation between one part of the land and another. Everything feels gently connected in stillness. Inside the home, there is no light remaining from the fire. The hearth is completely dark now, holding no glow, no warmth that can be seen, only the faint sense that it once held life earlier in the evening. The room itself is fully quiet and still, shaped by darkness that feels natural and steady. It is not a darkness that presses or unsettles. It is a darkness that simply exists, as familiar as the walls and floor that hold it. The air inside remains unchanged, resting evenly in every corner of the space. There is no movement that can be felt, no shift in temperature or pressure. It stays balanced and calm, as if the entire room has reached a point where nothing more needs to happen. The house holds this stillness gently, as it has done through many nights, without resistance or change. Outside, the silence continues without interruption. There are no sounds that rise above it, no movements that break its surface. If anything exists within it, it does so in such a faint and distant way that it becomes part of the silence itself rather than something separate. Even the wind, if it passes, does so without direction or weight, fading almost as soon as it is felt. Inside, the body remains fully at rest, immersed in deep sleep that feels complete and uninterrupted. There is no awareness of time or space, no distinction between one moment and the next. Everything exists in a continuous state of calm that does not shift or change. Breathing remains slow and even, steady without effort, as if it has naturally settled into a rhythm that requires nothing more. Time continues to feel less like something that moves and more like something that simply exists. It no longer divides itself into parts that can be noticed or measured. Instead, it stretches forward in a soft and unbroken way, without clear beginning or end. Everything is contained within this flow equally, without separation, without distinction. The night holds everything gently and completely. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no direction pulling anything forward, no change that demands attention, only a deep and continuous stillness that fills every part of the world equally. Nothing interrupts this calm. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting within the same soft and steady rhythm that has carried the day into night and now carries the night forward without end. And so the silence continues, quiet and complete, holding everything in a peaceful state of rest that does not move, does not break, and does not fade. The night now feels like it has fully settled into its longest and quietest form, where even the idea of time passing seems to soften into something distant and almost unnoticeable. Everything remains in place with a calm that does not shift or waver, as if the entire world has agreed to rest in the same quiet position for an extended and uninterrupted span. The sky continues to hold its wide and open darkness, stretching evenly in every direction without any visible change. The stars remain faint and steady, scattered gently across the vast space above. They do not move, do not flicker in any noticeable way, and do not grow brighter or dimmer. They simply remain as they are, quietly present, forming a soft and consistent pattern that feels timeless and unchanged. Below, the land is still in complete rest. Fields lie undisturbed, their shapes blending into one continuous surface of darkness. Trees remain motionless, their outlines now softened even further, becoming part of the night rather than standing apart from it. There is no movement across the open spaces, no activity that interrupts the calm. Everything feels evenly quiet, as if the entire landscape has entered a long and uninterrupted pause. Inside the home, there is no remaining trace of fire or light. The hearth is fully dark, holding no glow or warmth that can be seen. The room itself is completely still, filled with a darkness that feels natural and familiar. It does not feel heavy or empty. It feels steady, as if it belongs to the space in the same way that silence belongs to the night. The air inside remains balanced and unchanged. It rests evenly throughout the room, with no movement that can be felt or noticed. There is no shift in temperature, no sense of change or disturbance. Everything is quiet in a way that feels complete, as if the space has reached a point where nothing further is needed. The wooden structure of the home holds the stillness gently, creating a calm and enclosed atmosphere. Outside, the silence continues without interruption. There are no sounds that rise above it, no clear movements that break its surface. If anything moves at all, it does so in such a faint and distant way that it becomes part of the silence rather than something separate from it. Even the wind, if it passes, does so lightly and briefly, without direction or force, fading quickly into the night. Inside, the body remains fully immersed in deep sleep, steady and uninterrupted. There is no awareness of time, no sense of change or movement. Everything exists in a continuous state of rest that feels natural and complete. Breathing continues in a slow and even rhythm, calm and unbroken, requiring no attention or effort. Time itself feels almost dissolved in the stillness. It no longer appears as something that moves forward in distinct moments. Instead, it becomes a continuous presence that stretches without boundaries or edges. Everything exists within it equally, without separation or distinction, flowing gently through a quiet and unmarked continuity. The night holds everything in a steady and balanced calm. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no shift that draws anything forward, only a continuous stillness that fills every part of existence equally. Nothing interrupts this calm. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting quietly within the same soft and unbroken rhythm that has carried the entire world from day into night and now continues without end. And so the silence remains, deep and steady, holding everything in a peaceful state of rest that does not change, does not break, and does not fade. The night continues, though it no longer feels like something that moves forward in a clear direction. It feels more like something that simply remains, steady and complete, holding everything in a quiet balance that does not shift or change in any noticeable way. The stillness is not new, and it does not grow or lessen. It simply continues, evenly and calmly, as if it has always been here. The sky above remains wide and dark, stretching endlessly in every direction. The stars are still present, faint and steady, unchanged in their positions. They do not flicker in any visible way, nor do they draw attention to themselves. They remain soft points of light within the vast darkness, quiet and distant, forming a pattern that feels stable and unbroken. Nothing about them suggests movement or urgency. They simply exist. Below, the land remains fully at rest. Fields are still and quiet, their forms blending gently into the surrounding darkness so that boundaries become less noticeable. Trees stand in place without movement, their shapes softened further by the night until they feel like part of the same quiet presence that fills everything around them. There is no sound, no motion, no change across the open spaces. Everything is evenly still. Inside the home, there is no light left from the fire. The hearth is completely dark, holding no glow, no warmth that can be seen, only the quiet presence of what once was. The room is fully enveloped in darkness now, but it is a calm and familiar darkness, one that feels natural and settled rather than empty or uncertain. It rests in the space without tension or pressure. The air inside remains steady and unchanged. It fills the room evenly, with no movement that can be felt or observed. There is no shift in temperature or atmosphere. Everything remains balanced in a quiet state that feels complete. The wooden structure of the home holds the stillness gently, as it has done through many nights before, creating a sense of enclosure that is calm and unbroken. Outside, silence continues without interruption. There are no sounds that rise above it, no clear movements that break its surface. If anything passes through it, it does so in such a faint and distant way that it becomes part of the silence itself rather than something separate from it. Even the wind, if it moves at all, does so without force or direction, fading almost as soon as it appears. Inside, the body remains in deep and continuous sleep, fully immersed in rest. There is no awareness of time or space, no sense of beginning or ending, only a steady and unbroken state of calm that feels natural and complete. Breathing continues in a slow and even rhythm, steady and uninterrupted, requiring no attention or effort. The body remains fully at ease, without tension or movement. Time continues to feel distant and undefined. It no longer appears as something divided into moments or hours. Instead, it stretches forward in a continuous flow that has no clear boundaries or edges. Everything exists within this flow equally, without separation or distinction, moving gently through a quiet and unmarked passage. The night holds everything in a deep and steady calm. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no shift that calls anything forward, only a continuous stillness that fills every part of existence equally. Nothing interrupts this calm. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting within the same soft and steady rhythm that has carried the entire world through the night in complete and unbroken silence. And so the silence continues, endless and quiet, holding everything in a state of peaceful rest that does not change, does not break, and does not end. The night now feels like it has reached a point where it is no longer moving toward anything at all, but instead simply existing in a long and steady form of quiet presence. There is no sense of direction left in it, no feeling that something is coming or going. Everything is already here, already settled, already resting in place. The sky remains open and dark, stretching endlessly above the land in a calm and unbroken expanse. The stars are still there, faint and distant, holding their positions without change. They do not move, do not flicker in any noticeable way, and do not shift in brightness. They remain soft and steady points of light, scattered gently across the vastness, giving the sky a quiet sense of depth without disturbing its stillness. Below, the land continues in complete rest. Fields lie quiet and undisturbed, their surfaces blending more and more into the darkness as the night continues. Trees stand without motion, their forms softened and simplified by the lack of light, becoming part of the same calm presence that fills the entire landscape. There is no sound, no movement, no activity across the open spaces. Everything remains evenly still. Inside the home, the fire has now fully disappeared. There is no remaining glow, no trace of warmth that can be seen or felt from it. The hearth is dark and quiet, holding only the memory of what once was earlier in the evening. The room itself is fully dark, but the darkness is calm and natural, not empty or unsettling. It belongs to the space in a quiet and familiar way. The air inside remains steady and unchanged. It rests evenly throughout the room without movement or variation. There is no shift in temperature, no disturbance in the atmosphere. Everything feels balanced and complete, as if the space has reached a point where nothing further needs to happen. The house holds this stillness gently, without effort or interruption. Outside, silence continues without end. There are no sounds that rise above it, no movements that break its surface. If anything exists within it, it does so in such a faint and distant way that it becomes part of the silence rather than something separate from it. Even the wind, if it passes at all, does so in a very soft and brief way, fading quickly into the night without leaving any trace. Inside, the body remains fully at rest in deep and uninterrupted sleep. There is no awareness of time, no sense of change or direction, only a continuous state of calm that feels complete. Breathing continues in a slow and even rhythm, steady and unbroken, requiring no thought or attention. Everything within the body is relaxed and still. Time itself feels almost fully dissolved in this silence. It no longer appears as something divided into moments or hours. Instead, it stretches forward in a continuous and unbroken flow that has no clear boundaries. Everything exists within it equally, without separation or distinction, moving gently through a quiet and unmarked passage. The night holds everything in a deep and steady balance. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no shift that calls anything forward, only a continuous stillness that fills every part of existence equally. Nothing interrupts this calm. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting within the same soft and steady rhythm that has carried the world through the entire night and continues to hold it now without change. And so the silence remains, deep and endless, holding everything in a peaceful state of rest that simply continues, without beginning and without end. The night continues in its same quiet and steady form, though even continuing feels like too active of a word now. It is less something that moves forward and more something that simply remains, fully present and fully settled, holding everything in a calm balance that does not shift in any noticeable way. The sky above is still wide and dark, unchanged in its openness. The stars remain faint and steady, scattered across the vast space in a way that feels natural and unforced. They do not brighten or fade. They do not move closer or farther. They simply stay where they are, quiet and distant, forming a soft and consistent presence that gives the sky its depth without disturbing its stillness. Below, the land continues in complete rest. Fields lie quiet under the weight of night, their shapes now softened so much that they seem to blend into one another. Trees stand without movement, their outlines barely distinct from the darkness around them. Everything feels gently unified in stillness, as if the entire landscape has dissolved into a single, calm presence that does not change. Inside the home, the fire is gone entirely. There is no glow left, no warmth that can be seen or felt from it. The hearth is simply a quiet, dark space now, holding no movement at all. The room itself remains in full darkness, but it is a familiar and steady darkness, one that feels natural to the rhythm of the night. It does not press in or feel heavy. It simply exists. The air inside the house is still and even, resting in a balanced state that fills the space without shifting or changing. There is no motion in it, no disturbance, no variation in temperature that can be noticed. Everything feels stable, as if the room has reached a point where it no longer needs to adjust to anything. The wooden structure of the home continues to hold the stillness gently, as it has done through many quiet nights before. Outside, silence remains complete and uninterrupted. There are no sounds that rise above it, no clear movements that break its surface. If anything passes through it, it does so in such a faint and distant way that it becomes part of the silence itself rather than something separate from it. Even the wind, if it exists at all in this moment, moves so lightly that it cannot be clearly noticed, fading almost as soon as it arrives. Inside, the body remains fully immersed in deep sleep. There is no awareness of anything beyond rest, no sense of time or space or direction. Everything is held in a continuous and steady calm that feels complete. Breathing remains slow and even, consistent without interruption, requiring no thought or attention. The body is fully at ease, with no tension remaining. Time itself feels almost completely absent now. It no longer appears as something that moves or passes. Instead, it feels like a long, unbroken stillness that stretches forward without edges or divisions. Everything exists within it equally, without separation or distinction, flowing gently through a quiet and unmarked continuity. The night holds everything in a deep and balanced calm. The home remains dark and still, the land remains open and unmoving, and the sky remains wide and unchanged above it all. There is no urgency anywhere, no shift that calls anything forward, only a continuous stillness that fills every part of existence equally. Nothing interrupts this calm. Nothing disturbs it. Everything remains as it is, resting within the same soft and steady rhythm that has carried the entire world through the night and continues to hold it now in complete and unbroken silence. And so the silence remains, endless and gentle, holding everything in a peaceful state of rest that does not move, does not break, and simply continues without end. The night remains still, in its quiet and steady way, holding the world in a soft and unbroken calm. There is nothing new that begins here, and nothing that needs to continue in any direction beyond what already is. Everything rests exactly where it has settled, as if the entire passage of time has gently come to a natural pause. The sky stays wide and dark, with its faint stars holding their distant places in silence. They do not change, do not move, and do not call attention to themselves. They are simply there, part of a sky that has grown comfortable in its own stillness, like it has always known how to be this way. Below, the land remains quiet in every direction. Fields, trees, open ground, everything rests without motion, without sound, without interruption. The shapes of the world are softened by night, blending into one calm and continuous presence that asks for nothing and offers nothing more than quiet. Inside the home, there is no fire left, no light, no warmth that needs to be maintained. Only the structure remains, steady and familiar, holding the silence gently within its walls. The darkness inside is not empty. It is simply complete, the kind of darkness that belongs to rest, and to the end of a long and ordinary day. The air is still. The room is still. Everything is still. And in that stillness, there is no urgency left, no expectation, no unfinished moment waiting to arrive. Only a quiet sense that everything has already been lived in its proper time, in its natural rhythm, and has now returned to rest. The body sleeps without disturbance, carried by a calm that does not need to be understood or noticed. Time no longer feels present in any meaningful way. It has done what it needed to do, and now it simply fades into the background of stillness. Nothing reaches forward. Nothing pulls back. Everything remains gently where it is. And slowly, quietly, the night continues not toward anything new, but simply as itself soft, steady, and complete.